It is undeniable that the use of the word remake or reboot immediately makes a sect of the horror fan base recoil. Well, today I'm going to give you guys 5 movies that I think need a remake, a reboot, or just a reimagining. Let's do it. Hey, what's up everybody? Nick here, and today I wanted to give you guys 5 horror properties that I feel like need to be brought back to life. Now, whether that's a remake, a retelling, a reimagining, a reboot, whatever you want to call it, you know where I'm going with this one. Now, it is undeniable that there are some movies that just don't age very well, or they never got the proper treatment they deserved in the first place. And it is not sacrilege to say that maybe it needs a fresh adaptation. I feel like that's very fair, and I feel like there's a handful of movies throughout the genre, and pretty much every other genre, that we could find that fit that label. So, starting this off, I want to give you guys my first one, and that is Jaws. Paying attention? I'm totally kidding. Fuck that. So now being serious, the first one is Phantasm. And I think this should be an all-out remake or reboot with no tethers to what has come before it. Look, I am someone that got exposed to the Phantasm franchise a couple years ago, and I'm glad that I did. Because Phantasm and Phantasm 2, I think, are just incredible movies. And I have a really good time with the third one. Now, 4 and 5... well, those are a different story, but I feel like the first 2 to 3 movies in this series are varying degrees of great to pretty good. And Don Coscarelli, to his credit, he stewarded the ship for all 5 of these movies. This was his baby, he did not let go of it, and I appreciate him for doing that. I appreciate a lot of what went into Ravager, even though it ended up being a steaming pile of duty. I still appreciate that the main players came back, and they did what they could with the money that they had, and the time that they had, sadly with Angus Scrimm's advanced age. But I think Phantasm needs a total facelift. And why do I say that? Because it's such an interesting idea. It's such a cool concept. And I feel like with a really unique filmmaker and a good budget behind it, you could really bring a few new generations of Phantasm fans into the fold. They may see this one and really enjoy it and then go back and watch some of the great movies in this series. And I feel like that's a win-win for everybody involved. The only hang-up here would be casting the tall man, because Angus Scrimm's shadow is just going to be heavily over any Phantasm project that may ever happen in the future, no pun intended. You're really going to have to nail it with the tall man. There's a lot of people that I feel like personally could do the role really well, so I don't think it's something that should deter anybody from touching this property. But I think if one series really needs a remake, it's Phantasm. Coming in at number 4 is going to be Sleepaway Camp. Now, I think this should also be a remake and not so much a, requel or reimagining. No, I think this should be a remake. And for a lot of the same reasons that I had for Phantasm. Look, Sleepaway Camp is one of those movies that if the ending wasn't spoiled for you the first time you saw it, it probably made your jaw drop to the floor. You just didn't expect to see that. It was just wild. This is a movie that's just like mean-spirited while also being like upbeat. It's a super weird mix of tones, but I love this movie. This movie is so much fun. I love the effects in this movie. I love the atmosphere. I love it. I love the setting. I'm just kind of a sucker for summer camps, which is crazy because I'm not a huge Friday fan, but I love the summer camp vibe. I went to summer camps as a teenager and a kid, so I don't know. It's got a special place in my heart. But just like I said with Phantasm, a lot of these movies in this series, even the original, a lot of people just don't know about. And obviously with the most recent one being Return to Sleepaway Camp, nobody's following that up, okay? Nobody should even admit that that movie exists. So you're not going to make a requel. You're not going to make a sequel. You need to remake it. And I think that if you can remake this and you can do it really, really well, I think that that ending could really surprise a lot of new people. New generations of Sleepaway Camp fans can come in here and be like, what the hell did I just watch? And I also think it actually would play really well with today's times, because I feel like you could definitely touch on the subject matter, which is far more acceptable to talk about nowadays. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. If not, I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to spoil it. So check it out if you haven't yet. But I definitely think Sleepaway Camp needs a remake. Coming in at number 3 is going to be the movie that made me do this. It inspired me to do this list because I just talked about it in my last video, and that is The Leprechaun. Now, I'm going to say I think this one could go the requel route. Now, you could say, well, they kind of did that with Leprechaun Returns. Yes, but it didn't have Warwick. It just didn't feel the same. It didn't really feel tethered to the first movie. And I feel like, as I've said, if you're going to do a requel, you've really got to try to bring every living person that was a part of that movie back, because it really ties the two together well. It's just like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. I get it. I totally get it that Marilyn Burns was dead, so you couldn't have her as Sally, but it just didn't work. It didn't feel right. I think you should do a requel with this. I think you should make it a sequel to the first movie, or maybe the first two movies, however you want to do it, but you have to have Warwick Davis back. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, that would never happen. I know Warwick has said that he's, pretty much done with acting, but then he's come back to acting, and then he says he's not going to do it. Who knows? I feel like if the money is good enough, he would come back and do it, especially if he wasn't being asked to return for 8 movies. Also, I think that a big hang-up with that is Warwick realizes that the Leprechaun is just kind of, it's kind of a joke. Like, most people don't really take it seriously. But if you get a really talented filmmaker and a really solid script and some decent studio backing behind this, you could actually make it, kind of creepy and kind of good for today's audiences. People would want to go see it. I don't know, that's above my pay grade. I don't make horror movies, but I'm sure you could get people behind it to sell this movie to make people want to go see it. Also, St. Patrick's Day is just like a totally underutilized holiday for horror, so why not? I just feel like everything lines up that, you gotta do this. Now, I know Darren Lynn Bousman has talked many times about how he wants to do it. Let him do it. Because he said he wouldn't do it without Warwick Davis, and I feel like the man could convince him to come back. So if there's a movie that I think needs a requel, it's The Leprechaun. Coming in at number 2 is going to be Pumpkinhead. Now, I am a huge fan of the original movie. Always have been, always will be, I don't care. I used to watch this movie on VHS when I was a kid, when I would go to my Aunt Tina's house with my cousins, and all of my family members called me Pumpkinhead, because before I sprouted into the 6'4" person I am today, I was short and stubby, believe it or not, so my head was not proportionate to my body. So everybody called me Pumpkinhead, and it was because of this movie. But this movie scared the crap out of me as a kid. And I just watched it again last October for the first time in probably 10 years at least, and I still had a really good time with it. But my major takeaway with Pumpkinhead is you could do this so much better if you had the budget. It's really that's all it is. Just having the backing behind the project, you could really sell this thing. I will believe that until I'm dead and buried. I think that this is a movie that seriously needs a remake. It's screaming for a remake. And I'm not talking a Sci-Fi Channel remake with your Sharknado type bullshit. No, I'm talking Lionsgate or Universal or someone, Blumhouse. Oh my God, I said the B word. I don't really care. Someone that'll put money behind this and will put a decent enough team behind it to make it marketable to mass audiences. I want that for Pumpkinhead. I think anybody that likes the original Pumpkinhead wants that as well. Let's do it. Let's remake Pumpkinhead. And then, ironically enough, the movie that topped my latest video list, it also tops this list. Children of the Corn. I spoke ad nauseum in my last video about why I feel that way and what I think this series needs. So I'll just reiterate briefly. Look, Children of the Corn is a punchline. Nobody takes this series serious. They really didn't even take it serious after the first movie. Main reason that anybody has really ever seen it is because it has Stephen King's name attached to it. But most people, even when they watch the first one, they're like, okay, it was okay. And then it just, oh my God, it went off a cliff. And it's become a joke. And nobody wants to touch it. And I don't even think Stephen King talks about it, which is a shame. Now, Stephen King has these renaissance periods where for a couple years he's on top, and then for a couple years no projects are coming, then a couple years he's on top again. Whenever King peaks again, which I'm sure is going to happen in the next few years, this needs to be at the top of the list for movies that need a modern adaptation. A straight up remake. Just give me a good director, give me a good writer, give me some good actors, and try to make a scary, riveting, effective movie. Because the story is actually a good story. But my God, we have not had it put to film in any respectable way up to this point, and I am sick and tired of it. So there it is, guys. There is my list. Now, I hope that my use of the remake word did not offend too many people. But look, the sad reality is some of these beloved properties really do need that. And it is about time, while we're in this renaissance of horror, to get some of these modern adaptations up and running and introduce them to new audiences. But I want to hear down below in the comments section what you guys think. Did I say one that you think is absolutely sacrilege to touch and under no circumstances should it be remade? Did I miss one that you guys are like, wait, how could you not address this series? I want to hear all of that and more down below in the comments section. So please make sure to leave a like on this video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. This is Nick at the Lost River Drive-In, and I'm pulling out.